You finna leave, my boy?
Yeah, I'll come right back, man. I gotta go. Slide! It's my little brother's birthday. I gave him a present. Slide!
You know I got a name. It's half up.
Oh,
they ass be ops.
I'm front of you.
You hear men, gang, dirty, all that.
That's a free Durk and Vaughn. Freedom though. I'd rather them dead than in jail.
I'm gonna have me a decent little 3 night with my 40. And my man.
Somebody Melly, bro.
Did you see that video on YouTube at the house party?
Yeah, that video fucked me up, bro. That changed the whole war in Chicago. Let's talk about it.
If you're a fan of Chicago drill, then you already know about the top BD rappers like King Von and Lil Durk. But in the streets of Chicago, some of their enemies are just as famous, if not more, because of their rep in the city. One of the most feared names in that scene was a guy who went by the name Grave Digger of Chiraq.
That's a free Durk and Vaughn. Freedom though. I'd rather them dead than in jail. Big.
I'm gonna have me a decent little 3 night with my 40. And my man.
This dude was no joke. He was one of Von and Durk's biggest enemies and earned a terrifying reputation as one of the most feared gang members in Chicago. To get a nickname like that in a city full of hardcore street legends, you know you've got to be knee-deep in some serious stuff. And we're talking about none other than 051 Melly, a savage who didn't just strike fear into his ops but earned their respect at the same time.
Now nigga Melly, I ain't on no distance shit. RIP Melly, whatever, from the ops. Now he wasn't the you could talk to, you know what I'm saying? You could talk to him because he cool.
Y'all grew up, so you ever knew Melly or?
Yeah, I knew all of them.
Melly, whose real name was Yarmel Williams, was ruthless to the point that it took some serious planning to take him down. His reputation on the streets was no joke. He was known as a cold-blooded savage, with rumors that he had double-digit bodies to his name. Let's dig deeper into the story behind this infamous figure.
Hey, look, we from up here though, fellas.
Hell no.
You ain't even GD.
Melly was born and raised on the south side of Chicago. Early on, he lived in the Calumet building, also known as Randolph Towers, but after the projects were torn down, he moved with his family to 59th and Calumet. He grew up alongside his mom, his brother Wu, and his sister Kanjaya. His stepfather, Jerome Golden, was a well-known BD, Black Disciple, in Chicago, currently serving a life sentence for 4 murders and a robbery. On top of that, Melly had a bunch of uncles and cousins who were heavily connected to the streets, including Mubu Kurt Mack and No Limit G Slim, one of the founders of NLMB, a feared gang in the city. So Melly was surrounded by gang life from a young age, with nearly everyone in his circle being about that action. But just because his family had a strong rep in the streets didn't mean Melly automatically got respect. He had to earn his own status as a savage, and that he did. While growing up in the Calumet building, Melly got tight with the BDs who claimed the area. However, things changed when he went to DuSable High School, where he started hanging out with the Mickey Cobras, another major gang in Chicago. Melly got close to a dude named 051 Zeko, a member of the 051 Money Gang, a set made up of different gangs, including BDs, Black P Stones, and Mickey Cobras. With his connections, Melly fit right in. Even though Melly started out as a BD, rumors later spread that he might have switched sides and became a Mickey Cobra. That's because 051's main enemies were O-Block, 600, Lamron, and other BD sets. By getting involved in this beef, Melly essentially became BDK, Black Disciple Killer, a renegade BD who turned against his own people.
One of the most reckless BDs out here, but I'm BDK, but he BDK.
What was clear, though, is that Melly repped Young Money, a renegade squad that lived by its own rules and didn't follow the structure of any specific gang. Melly's transformation into a savage happened after 051 Zeko was murdered by someone from THF. Zeko's murder was the turning point for Melly. It pushed him to go harder in the streets, and from then on, he was known for being a straight-up terror. The death of 051 Zeko sparked a major war between Young Money and THF, and Melly was right at the center of it, becoming one of the key players in the retaliation. He didn't waste time getting revenge for Zeko's death, making his move in 2010.
Hey, what year somebody died, Mom?
You said what year?
For sure.
Zeko got in 08, I'm keeping fun. Then somebody died in 10, right?
Things escalated even further when a 600 member named M Thang took out another Young Money member, 051 T Streets, which only intensified the beef. That sparked a full-on war between 051 and 600, as well as any other sets that were aligned with 600. Melly, along with 051 Kiddo, hit back by killing 600 Shaq on the 5900 block of South Calumet Avenue. At this point, Melly had already built a name for himself with a few bodies under his belt, earning his reputation as a ruthless shooter who wouldn't hesitate to go after anyone, even members of his own gang, if they crossed him or his crew. What made Melly stand out in the streets was his deep connections across various gangs throughout the city. He had relationships with people from different sets, but when it came time to handle business, it didn't matter who was on the other side. He was ready to take anyone down. People said that Melly moved through the streets like a chess player, always calculating his moves and paying attention to alliances. He stalked his enemies on social media, studying their patterns and movements to catch them slipping. This strategy made him even more dangerous and helped him get the drop on his ops when they least expected it. After 600 Shaq was murdered, the BDs retaliated by murdering a 14-year-old from 051 named Fats. Fats was close to Melly, and his death had a huge impact on him. It turned him even colder and more ruthless, pushing him deeper into the savage life. To honor Fats, 051 started going by the name Fats World, similar to how a block was named after Odie Perry, or Tookaville was named after Tuka. Melly's homie, 051 Kiddo, played a major role in getting revenge for Fats's death. Kiddo first caught 600 tricks lacking in his car in the Washington Park neighborhood on the south side. Then, rumors started to swirl that Tricks, C-Dye, and L.A. Capone from 600 were all involved in the murder of Fats. Not long after those rumors surfaced, Louisiana Capone was gunned down while leaving a recording studio. L.A. Capone was one of the rising stars from 600, and his death was a massive blow to the crew. He had just started to blow up as a rapper, so losing him was a serious setback. The murder of L.A. Capone only turned up the heat between the BDs and 051 even more, escalating an already out-of-control war. This back-and-forth violence created a bloodbath between the two sides, making the streets of Chicago even more dangerous. Several dudes from 600 began going at Melly on Twitter, throwing shade and disrespecting his fallen homie Fats. Like a lot of street dudes from Chicago, Melly wasn't the type to let that slide, and he fired back with his own insults, making the beef even more personal. The tension was already thick after the death of L.A. Capone, and 600 took Melly's disrespect to heart, making him one of the most hated ops among the BDs. It was only a matter of time before they decided to strike back. At the time, 051 wasn't really known for having rappers in their crew like the BDs, who had built a name for themselves both in the streets and in the music scene. Instead, 051 was more focused on handling their business in the streets. But that started to change when a young money rapper named Lil Mark began gaining attention. Lil Mark took aim at the BDs, who were more well-known on a music level, and earned some clout for going after them with his diss tracks. Lil Mark dropped a remix to Lil Durk's track competition called No Competition, where he went all out, dissing several members of 600, OTF, Lamron, and other BD-affiliated sets by name. The BDs were still grieving the loss of L.A. Capone, and this diss was like salt in the wound. So they moved quickly to get their revenge. Just 3 days after Lil Mark released No Competition, the BDs caught him lacking and murdered him. To make matters worse, the BDs didn't just leave it at that. They made sure to publicly mock Lil Mark's death, using his murder as another way to disrespect 051. It wasn't just one or two people either. Members of 300, 600, and OTF all jumped in to clown on Lil Mark and his set. Lil Mark was shot while waiting at a bus stop, and soon after, BD members started posting pictures and videos of themselves at the very same spot where he was murdered. Even Lil Durk, one of the most high-profile members of the BD-affiliated OTF, got involved. He posted a video on social media standing at the bus stop where Lil Mark was gunned down. In the video, Durk sarcastically says, "This bus stop right here though, this a real famous place," adding the caption, "Free THFTP," to rub salt in the wound.
Bus stop, man. Hey, this bus stop right here though, this a real famous place, yeah? This a real famous place. Hey, this bus stop is a real famous place.
That video mocking Lil Mark's death really got under Melly's skin, especially since he was tight with Lil Mark. It was only a matter of time before Melly decided to retaliate, and he wasn't going to go after just anyone. He wanted to hit Durk where it hurt. Not long after, Melly spotted Durk's cousin, OTF Nunu, also known as Nusky, sitting in a parked car outside of a shopping complex. Nusky was on the rise as a rapper and had just signed with Durk's OTF label 2 days before he was murdered. He'd been making waves with his single OC, which was getting serious attention, and it looked like he was about to be the next big thing coming out of the South Side.
I'm hot, so I know they plotting. Go broke, had little bro robber. That my problem solver.
Unfortunately, Nusky's life was cut short before he could fully capitalize on his potential, all because of his ties to Durk. He was sitting in one of Durk's SUVs when Melly allegedly spotted him. Some people think that Melly may have thought Durk was in the car and that Nusky was just collateral damage. Others say Melly knew exactly who Nusky was and went after him because he was an easier target. Either way, Nusky's death was a direct response to the killing of Lil Mark, and it evened the score between 051 and Durk's OTF 600 crew.
Them left Nusky. They left his ass right here. You feel me? They left his ass up here on folks and them tweaking. Yeah, you feel me? Historic events. Y'all know I'm gonna bring y'all around this historic events. Wish you would play with me, boy. I look like Nusky.
But for Melly, it didn't stop there. He was determined to make a statement. Less than a year later, another tragedy struck Durk's camp when his manager, OTF Chino, was shot and K-worded while sitting in a parked car on the south side, near the 8400 block of South Stony Avenue. Chino had just appeared in a music video for a track called Bus Stop by THF-TP, a song that was filmed at the very spot where Lil Mark had been murdered. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone, and it seemed like the beef between 051 and OTF was spiraling out of control. Around the same time, Durk had been throwing shots at 051 in his music, most notably in his remix of Chief Keef's Finito, where he rapped, "B, I'm riding through the ops, finna go and shoot Young Money up."
Bitch, I'm riding through the ops. Finna go and shoot your money up.
This only fueled the fire, and Melly wasn't about to let the disrespect slide. So, when the opportunity arose, he allegedly went after Chino. To make things even worse, after Chino was murdered, Melly jumped on social media to rub salt in the wound. During an Instagram live session, he made fun of Chino's death by saying he was eating a Chino burger, a brutal taunt aimed directly at his ops.
Just let me a piece. Yeah, Chino burger. That's what they said. Get the f out of here.
Melly wasn't the only one disrespecting the dead. His homie Mubu Crump, a GD from King Louie's Man Up Band Up crew, got in on it too. Crump went to the exact spot where Chino was murdered and ordered a Chino burger, only to throw it away in a video, further mocking Durk's loss.
Hey, this motherfucker bogus as hell, man. Y'all, this done, man. Y'all done put this on the grill, man. This shit disgusting, man. Get this shit together, man. For real, this bogus as hell, man.
Now, with both Nusky and Chino gone, Melly had taken out two people close to Durk, making himself one of the most hated enemies in the Chicago drill scene. Durk wasn't going to let it slide either. He released multiple diss tracks aimed at Melly, but at that point, Durk was focused on his rap career and blowing up in the industry, while Melly was still knee-deep in street life. The two weren't exactly in the same circles anymore, making it tough for either of them to get at each other directly. That's why Melly chose to hit Durk where it hurt, by going after his people, like Nusky and Chino. Word on the streets was that Durk had put a bounty on Melly's head, which only added to the tension. With Melly's growing reputation and the long list of enemies he had stacked up, it wasn't long before someone finally caught up with him. Things took a serious turn when THF Raheem came after Melly and two of his homies on the 600 block of South Wentworth Avenue in Englewood. Fortunately, all three of them survived, but Melly caught bullets to both his head and foot. It didn't take long for 051 Ario, who also got hit in the shooting, to seek revenge on Raheem, setting off a chain reaction of trouble for both Melly and the whole 051 crew. Now, here's where it gets complicated. THF Raheem was not just any random op. He was actually the blood cousin of FBG Duck, a well-known figure in the Chicago scene, and the stepson of another feared street legend, THF Bezu. Melly and Duck had a solid friendship, but Duck knew the harsh reality of the streets. An op is an op, no matter the family ties. Even though Melly and Bezu had some mutual respect, their rivalry ran deep. They even went live on Instagram together once, boasting about their body counts and laying out the ongoing war between their crews. But respect in this world doesn't mean there won't be bloodshed. After Raheem got hit, Bezu was on the hunt for revenge. It wasn't long before he caught Melly slipping at a house party, along with his buddy Mubu Crump. They were just chilling on the front lawn when a vehicle rolled up and opened fire. Crump tragically lost his life, while Melly somehow managed to escape with just a graze to the head. This was now the second time Melly had survived a headshot, which only added to his legend on the streets. Even though Melly was the target, Crump got caught up in the crossfire likely because he had a reputation for running his mouth about THF and other BDs. So, while Melly might have been the main aim, Crump's association with him put him in the wrong place at the wrong time. Surviving 2 shootings back-to-back only boosted Melly's status in the streets, and it wasn't long before he was back out hunting his ops. Things took another dark turn when 051 lost another member, Bankroll Q. Melly made sure to get payback, sliding on 2 guys believed to be responsible for Q's death. But his thirst for revenge didn't stop there. It just fueled him further. He kept racking up bodies, making a name for himself while somehow managing to stay one step ahead of his enemies. Even with all that going on, Melly never hid his hatred for Durk. After Durk and Vaughn got locked up for attempted murder following a shooting outside the Varsity in Atlanta, Melly took to social media to voice his thoughts. He publicly stated that he hoped Durk and Vaughn would beat their case, but honestly, he'd prefer to see them dead rather than behind bars. It seemed like it was just a matter of time before Melly would continue his reign of terror and go after someone else close to Durk and Vaughn. But fate had other plans, and he ended up losing his life in an unrelated beef.
That's all free Durk and Vaughn. Freedom though. I'd rather them dead than in jail, bitch.
Around this time, Melly had started getting tight with a crew called Jaro City. Just like 051 Money Gang, Jaro City was a mix of different gangs, including GDs and renegade BDs. After Melly's homie Motor from Jaro City was murdered, things took a turn for the worse. With so many friends gone and a body count of his own, Melly began to spiral out of control. His fearsome reputation in the streets made him feel invincible, but that kind of mindset is a dangerous game when you have so many enemies gunning for you. The drama escalated when he got into a dice game with a guy named 007 Nate from Taekwon World. After things heated up, Melly retaliated by shooting up Nate's house while Nate's baby mother and newborn child were inside. Thankfully, no one was hurt, but that was just the fuel Nate needed to seek revenge. Fast forward to September 2019, Melly showed up at a house party hosted by FBG and Jaro City to honor the memory of one of Duck's close friends, Can't Get Right. He was tight with both crews, but they warned him that some ops from Taekwon World might be in attendance. Despite the heads up, Melly felt untouchable and decided to roll through anyway, probably thinking he could handle any trouble that came his way. Sure enough, 007. Nate ended up catching Melly lacking at the party. In a shocking turn of events, he shot Melly right in front of a crowd of people, and the whole thing was caught on camera. This time, Melly wasn't so lucky and ended up dying that night. Melly will go down in history as one of the most feared shooters in Chicago. He was so notorious that many media outlets even referred to him as a rapper, even though he never dropped a single track. Instead, he inspired countless diss tracks that only solidified his reputation in the streets. But living that kind of life for too long usually leads to 2 outcomes: death or jail. The wild part is that, despite all the bodies Melly had, it was a seemingly random shooting that took him out, where no one else was even hurt. In the end, it was all payback for the dirt he'd done on the streets. His legacy will live on as a feared but respected figure,